I never thought it could happen to me. I was just a regular guy, living a life I thought was simple, even if I had my share of struggles along the way. But sometimes, when the things you trust most crumble before your eyes, it leaves you wondering how well you ever knew anyone, including yourself. The day it all started was like any other, at least on the surface. I came home from work late, tired from the grind, the noise of the day still echoing in my mind, but it was quiet when I walked in, too quiet. Something about the stillness in the air made my skin crawl. My wife, Emily, was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, her face pale and drawn. It was strange because she always had that smile of hers, bright, warm, full of energy, but that night, it was gone. "Hey," I said, setting my bag down. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away, didn't even look up. It wasn't like her, and I could feel a wave of unease wash over me, creeping into the corners of my mind. "Emily," I said again, trying to break the silence. She finally looked at me, and there it was, an emptiness in her eyes. A look I hadn't seen in years. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the doorbell rang. It was strange, almost too perfect, like the universe was timing it just right. I walked to the door, expecting it to be some salesman or maybe one of the neighbors, but when I opened it, there was no one there. I stepped out, looked both ways, and saw nothing but the empty street. As I turned to go back inside, I heard something almost imperceptible, like a whisper carried on the wind. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt wrong. My heart began to race as I stepped back inside. I glanced at Emily again, only this time, her face was completely blank, like she had gone somewhere far away. I wanted to ask what was going on, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, the hairs on my neck standing up. The house felt off. "Is everything all right?" I finally managed to ask. She didn't answer at first. Instead, she stood up slowly and walked toward me, her footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You need to know something," she said, her eyes locking with mine. "What is it?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "It's about your father," she replied. And in that moment, everything in me froze. My father, the man who had been the rock of our family, the one who had always been there for me, always stood by me. His name had never been associated with anything other than strength, stability. But as Emily spoke, my world began to unravel. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said, her hands trembling. "I found something. Something I didn't expect." My mind was racing now, 1,000 thoughts flying through my head. What could she have found? What was she talking about? "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice shaking. She took a deep breath, her eyes welling up. "I found proof, Ryan, proof that your father isn't who he says he is." At that moment, my whole body went cold, like the air in the room had been sucked out. "What do you mean?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. She looked at me for a long time, and in her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before: fear. Real, raw fear. I found papers. Old documents. And a name I didn't recognize. Her voice trembled as she spoke, her words like a punch to my gut. "Ryan, your father. He's been hiding something from you. From all of us." My mind was racing. I couldn't process it. My father hiding something, what could it possibly be? I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but instead, I just stood there, paralyzed. What kind of papers? I managed to ask. Legal papers, she replied, her voice almost breaking. And there's more. A bank account. I looked it up, Ryan. The name on the account, it wasn't your father's. It was someone else's, someone with ties to him. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I don't know what this means, but I think we've been living a lie. My chest tightened, and I felt dizzy. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. My father was a good man, he'd never done anything wrong. At least, that's what I'd always believed. But now, with every word Emily spoke, the foundation of everything I knew about him, about my family, began to crumble. We need to talk to him, I said, my voice coming out hoarse. We need to get to the bottom of this. Emily shook her head slowly. I don't know if he'll tell us the truth, Ryan. I don't know if he's ever going to tell us what's really going on. I felt like I was drowning. The room spun, and I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself. I needed answers. I needed to know what the hell was happening. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, I didn't even know who to trust anymore. My own father was a stranger, and that thought was enough to make me sick to my stomach. We need to find out, I said again, more forcefully this time. Emily nodded, but there was a look in her eyes that told me she wasn't so sure. I'll help you, but I'm scared, Ryan. I don't know where this is going to lead. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had always thought I was the strong one, the one who protected her, the one who kept everything together. But right now, I was the one falling apart. We'll figure it out, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed my own words. We stood there in the silence, the weight of the secrets in the room pressing down on us. I knew things were never going to be the same again. This was just the beginning. The next few days felt like a blur. I kept replaying Emily's words in my head over and over, the implications of what she had found gnawing at me, chipping away at the stability I had once taken for granted. Every time I tried to think about it logically, my mind just couldn't grasp it. My father, this man I had always looked up to, respected, admired, was hiding something. And I had no idea what that something was. Emily had gone quiet after our conversation, withdrawn into herself in a way I had never seen before. I couldn't blame her. This wasn't just a family secret, it was a betrayal. A betrayal that cut deep. I spent the next few days digging through the papers Emily had found, trying to make sense of them, but everything seemed like a dead end. There were bank statements, legal documents, and a name, some woman named Olivia. None of it made sense. I couldn't understand how this connected to my father. I couldn't understand why he would have hidden this from me. The more I searched, the more questions I had. And as each question piled on top of the other, the answers became harder to find. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront him. I had to know the truth. I called my father's phone 3 times. No answer. I texted him, told him I needed to talk, that it was important. I waited for what felt like hours, but no response. Something in my gut told me that maybe he already knew what I was about to confront him with. Maybe he'd been expecting this. So, I did what any person desperate for answers would do. I drove to his house. The drive was long, and the further I got from home, the more uneasy I felt. The street lights flickered in the dark, casting long shadows that made the world seem smaller, more oppressive. My heart beat louder as I neared his house, and I could feel the tension in my chest tighten with each passing mile. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I saw his truck parked in the garage, the lights on inside. The house looked normal. Almost too normal. Like nothing had changed. I parked the car, took a deep breath, and got out. My palms were sweating as I walked up to the front door. I knocked, the sound echoing louder than I expected. And then, nothing. No movement inside. I knocked again, harder this time, my knuckles almost rapping through the wood. Still nothing. It wasn't like him to ignore me, not when I was standing on his doorstep. Something was wrong. I pushed the doorbell, but still, there was no answer. I grabbed the door handle, hesitated for just a moment, and then turned it. To my surprise, the door was unlocked. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I stepped inside. "Dad," I called out, my voice breaking the silence that hung heavy in the air. I took a few steps into the house, the scent of old wood and dust filling my nostrils. The living room was exactly how I remembered it, furniture in its usual spots, family pictures on the walls. Everything seemed normal. But my instincts were telling me otherwise. I walked through the living room, the sound of my footsteps too loud in the quiet house. The door to my father's study was closed. I knew that door. It was always closed when he was working, always locked when he needed privacy. I reached for the handle and, to my surprise, it opened with ease. The room was dark, only the glow of a desk lamp lighting up the clutter of papers strewn across the desk. My father's voice was always clear, always commanding, but right now, all I could hear was the deafening silence. I stepped further into the room, my pulse racing. That's when I saw it. The file. It was on the desk, half open, papers spilling out onto the floor. I didn't think twice. I grabbed it. As I flipped through the pages, the air seemed to get heavier, the words blurring together in a mess of confusion and disbelief. But then, something caught my eye, a photo. A photograph of my father and a woman I had never seen before. The woman was smiling, sitting on his lap, her arm draped around his shoulder in a way that was far too intimate for just a colleague or a friend. She was beautiful, her hair long and dark, her eyes sparkling in the light of the photograph. But it wasn't just the picture that sent a chill down my spine. It was the date this photo was taken, just